What's up, Surf's Up, guys? This is Mauisnake for SkinClub. I'm going to be looking at all of the teams that are playing at the BLAST Open Lisbon, and I'm going to be putting them all into a tier list here based off of my expectations. And all in all, I actually really do like doing these because it allows me to have a platform to lay out my thoughts regarding the teams and really just what I think of them going into a tournament, which then I can build on through the death segments. So in a way, this is kind of like the rough draft of how I'm going to be framing my narratives going into every single team at this event. So first things first, I usually like to give you guys a C grade team, an F grade team, and then kind of like a B or a C grade team, something in the middle, just so that we can set our bearings. So I don't think this needs much explanation if you've been following Counter-Strike for the last, few days? I mean, weeks, months. IEM Katowice victory, and also ESL Pro League Grand Final victory. Vitality look completely untouchable at present time, and so I'm going to obviously be putting them into the S tier there. I feel like it's pretty cool that SkinClub is sponsoring a team that is the best in the world. I don't know, just a little bit of a shout out there. But all in all, this team is just gelling way faster than I had even expected. I thought that Rops might take a little bit of time to settle into the roster. I understand his powers. Obviously, I've been a little bit biased in the past against people like Zywoo and Rops in terms of just like, not that they're bad. Like, it's not that they're bad, but just sometimes the way that they could lead to winning in different ways, but they just are very unashamedly playing their own style. And it's right. I mean, it works in this team. They've got aggressive players around them in Flames and Apex. And Mezzy is also just a really great glue guy. He can play anchor positions as well, tough spots. He's been doing quite well in those spots. And I think the slept on narrative probably right now, I think there's a lot of things that are going well for this team, but it's not even just that they've got arguably top 2 player in the world right now in Zywoo. Him and Donk seem to be competing for that title right now. It's just that Apex has also been fragging out. I mean, this guy is clearly the best fragging in-game leader when his team is clicking, and that's not necessarily even just because he is on a team that's winning. He's actually taking space, winning fights against good players on other teams, and that has been a huge boon for them. And before, it sometimes had to be, say, Flames, or sometimes even Zywoo would be the rightful entry on T side. But now Apex can really take up the role and find a good deal of success on it. F tier team, unfortunately, is the Huns. I saw these guys in the elevator right before recording this one, actually. And I mean, they really shouldn't be here, right? For Asia teams that are supposed to be invited, technically they sort of slipped in because ATOX have a match fixing accusation levied against them. So I don't really, personally, I know that the Huns like to run set pieces. I just feel like, and they might be a little bit random on CT side, but they do have Bartak, who was part of the IHC crew beforehand, and they were a team that fought their way through that Blast Asia qualifier, and they actually were able to beat Lin Vision. So the team isn't really, like, they're not slouches by any means, but they're clearly weaker than the rest of the competition. I know that if this were a major and they had already qualified, a lot of people would say you can't count them out to go 0-3. They're just going to upset some lower ranked European team. Frankly, I just don't really see that team here. I feel like even a team that I would also like to consider in lower ranks, like Imperial or M80, I can see a case where they actually win a little bit more. So I am putting the Huns in the F tier. If I wanted to be nice, I just wouldn't use an F tier at all, but I am who I am, and I like having teams that I think should have basically bottom of the barrel expectations. And I don't think that's necessarily like that. That's just truly my feeling on it. I know that sometimes people will get mad or like blow up. It's like, oh, if they win a map or they win a series, then like suddenly I'm wrong. But it's like, I don't think I'm wrong based off of the results I've seen, based off of the bit of footage that I've looked into so far for this team. And yeah, all in all, if they're able to win, then they exceed expectations. I think you like tangent here, obviously. And this is probably just because I've been streaming so much so I can go on tangents all the time. I don't really think that it's a crime to underrate a team before they prove it. I don't think like if you just give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I had a whole tier list here of S, A plus, A, and B rated teams, and said like the worst is a C, then like what is failure in this space, or what is low expectation? If C is already good, why are, I don't know, propping people up before they really earn it is a disservice to the journey that they end up going on. So hopefully you got that clicks with a few of you guys. If you're watching this content, you probably are already a fan of me, so you kind of get my messages through these things. But I know a lot of people that dislike my work will be like, "Wow, he doesn't know anything about the Huns." It's like, no, I do, and I just have no expectations knowing what I know. Okay, now B tier. I actually am. I've labeled a couple of these in order. The reason I put Vitality, Huns, and Astralis in order was that I actually do have kind of B tier expectations for this team. They are seemingly improving. Yabi and Device could be on a team pretty easily that's top 8 in the world, maybe even top 7 in the world. But other people haven't really caught up to speed. Stair has re-signed for a few more years with Astralis, maybe a couple. I think it's 2027, if I'm not mistaken. I'll get that right on the desk. And so they're putting some faith in him as being another kind of like Messi-esque player. He's like the Messi of Denmark right now, it feels like. Just very, very solid in role, difficult positions, seems to be helping, not an attitude problem at all. But Stout and Cadian are having problems individually. And on top of that, I still think that they're in between styles. I don't know if they are all aboard the Cadian wavelength of kind of gambling a little bit more. I think some people like Yabi and Stout get it, but I don't really know if Stair and Device totally do. I've seen some desync between them, although Cluj was a good sign. I like the calling from Astralis on both Ancient and Inferno. They seem to have some promise on a couple other maps. I'm not really sold on the others, if I'm being real with you. I think their Mirage is quite bad, and I am surprised they were able to beat FaZe in the BO3 that for the third place decider. But that's kind of a frustrating point for FaZe. Now I'm going to try to round out some of these other categories. By the way, nobody else is S tier. In fact, I'm going to put Spirit right now into the A plus tier. This is a team that still should beat everybody at this tournament, with the exception of Vitality. I know they lost to Mouz in the ESL Pro League semifinals. I don't think if you run that back a couple times that it's going to be the same result every time. I feel like if you ran that 5 BO3s in a row, different days, I think Spirit win 3 out of 5. Maybe that's a little bit of a dated perception of this team, or maybe it's an unreasonable amount of faith that I have in Donk. But either way, I do think that Spirit are still a cut above everybody else not named Vitality. Now, A tier. A tier is a team that I've actually been kind of concerned about lately. The fall from grace is quite obvious at this point, and I feel like Na'Vi are in a space where I almost feel like I might be too kind by putting them in the A tier. I don't think that they showed me at ESL Pro League that they're necessarily bouncing back in the way that we all wanted, and they didn't get a top 4 finish. They finished in 5th to 8th. They got smoked by the Mongols, the most lopsided playoff match until we got to the grand final where Vitality bodied Mouz. The way that Na'Vi lost to Vitality or to the Mongols was kind of depressing, because the Mongols took a lot of individual duels in different parts of the maps over the course of rounds, and they won practically all of them. The individual form let this team down when they were playing in Shanghai, and it continues to be a problem for them because other teams have caught up to the structure. Na'Vi demos had to have been some of the most studied of the previous year, so everybody is quite aware of what strategies they want to run. I don't think Mirage is the haven for them that it once was, maybe 5 months ago at all. They are way behind on that map now, and it feels like when I'm watching them play, they're just running the same stuff. They have not reinvented their mid control. Still Ema coming from underpass. Still Alexi B swinging from top mid. Still JL at ramp. Still Bit in Palace. And it's just like teams understand what's happening now. You gotta change things up a little bit. And even though I have a lot of faith in Blade, I'm beginning to lose a little bit of faith in them renewing their playbook. And I think this team needs another honeymoon. I am going to stand away from making a hot take regarding Wonderful right now because he actually showed up for them a little bit. He wasn't terrible. I feel like Ema or JL are probably the ones that if I had to make a move, it'd probably be them now, which is crazy to say because Ema had a great come up. He was a reason that they found consistency throughout the middle of last year, but his form has declined. And JL, still a great rifler, so I wouldn't really want to pick at him just yet. But even Alexi B. I mean, I know that sounds unholy to say that Alexi B should be under the spotlight on the hot seat right now, but with how every single team, with how teams are just so willing now to drop their in-game leader and pick up some rifle talent or whatever, I don't know how you can really excuse his poor performances. He's one of the worst performing players as an individual outside of like Kerrigan and Snacks right now. So he's not, the strats aren't helping them, and his play's not helping them. So what are you supposed to do there? Might be worth looking into making Ema the in-game leader and then promoting somebody like Makaze from their academy team. So yeah, a lot to think about for Navi in the coming weeks, coming months. I think that most of these teams will probably play out their rosters until the major finishes, but if Navi wanted to jump the gun, they could actually maybe make a huge upgrade. But I think it's a little bit too risky for Blade's Blood. C tier here. A team that I've kind of I guess I've lost some. It's difficult to characterize them. I don't have the most faith in Furia. I think Fury actually might be D tier for me. I'm not sure if I want to put Fury in C tier or D tier right now. I'm gonna lean them towards the D tier because I've just not seen anything ever since IEM Rio. I have seen nothing from this team. Skulls probably an upgrade. It's still an upgrade on paper over Drop. And of course it's an upgrade over Kai. Let's not even get into that. But overall, just so far from where they need to be. K Serato performs decently. Fallen is, of all the people that I've played so far, I mean, Fallen's probably, of all the teams that are even at Lisbon, I think Fallen is a bottom 4 opper. It's pretty hard to put anybody beneath him, actually, from any of these teams, period. So yeah, he's got to be one of the worst oppers around here. Ignore the last few teams here. This is just from another tier list. But no op presence to speak of. When your best rifler is a passive rifler, he can't really dictate the outcome of a game all too much. Cello is sometimes, I mean, Cello's putting up just generational ass performances. I don't know what to say. Like he doesn't get the best setup all the time, and sometimes the CT spots are a little bit harder. But I feel like he should have bounced back by now. So I'm pretty concerned about him. Just don't think this team has reinvented itself, and also with it shrinking its staff, with them not having, they were working with Innershine and Lucid before, and I saw some progress in their tactics on both sides, and now I feel like they've just regressed again. So I feel like when it's just the core Furious staff that are working on this team, outside of hiring a little bit of additional assistant coach help, they're pretty lost, and I almost want to put them in F tier now. The more I talk about this, the more I want to put them in F tier. So yeah, D tier after a 1-3 group stage where the only team that they beat was MIBR at ESL Pro League, and technically they beat Linvision, NRG, and M80. And why not get into M80? Why not get into M80? Because M80 were a bit disappointing themselves. And I like these guys, but I also think like this is a team where I temper my expectations. And also, I don't want to just unnecessarily big up a team that doesn't deserve it yet. You know, M80, after the wreck injury, were playing with Keto for a while. It did hurt their VRS standings. And Lake is a talent. It's kind of crazy to say this, but Lake, if you compare Lake to the players on Fury, he might actually be right, like second to K Serato. For an org like Furia that has as much pull in an entire continent versus M80, who are just kind of working with just taking chances on tier 2, tier 3 North American players, for them to find a gem like Lake, it's fantastic. But I don't really have too much faith in them. Going to be tough to do any serious damage at this event. Now let's get into a C tier team. C tier, I am going to. I guess I'll put VP here. They didn't even make it to the playoffs of Cluj, which is a massive disappointment. I'm tempted to put them in the D tier, but the Katowice performance, where they're able to make it to playoffs, gives me a little bit more faith than, say, Furia. So Flit, hit or miss. I'm not in love with this guy as much as I was in CSGO. Technically, he's the highest rated player with a 1.07 for the year in top 20 matches for VP. But the other guys on the team, I see just really, to me, really kind of vanilla opper. I'm not really blown away. He was pretty good at late rounds for them in the beginning, and with Cloud9, he was a good late round player. I don't know if I see that as much anymore. I don't think this team really has found itself at all. I think that The Katowice playoff is just a fluke at this point. People got a little bit excited about them. I know Yanko got pretty excited. It's like, say VP are bad. And it's like, well, we can say they're bad. Yeah, I think they're pretty bad. C tier might even feel kind, but when there's an S tier and an A plus tier, that's fairly low. I do rate Astralis better than VP at this point. Now, yeah, let's talk about FaZe. For FaZe, I said at the Blast Bounty that I wanted to give this team 2 months to see what Kerrigan is able to do with Elige, with the swapping of positions, with Rain going into more anchor spots. And at Cluj, they looked like they were on pace to do exceedingly well, to maybe even have a grand finals finish. They were stopped, unfortunately, by, they lost the decider game to Astralis in the third place decider. And for FaZe, we haven't seen them play actually since Cluj. And, I would say for them, they were able to have a really convincing group stage, beating Mouz 2-0, beating Eternal Fire, and beating a Saw that was surprisingly competitive. But in the playoffs, when they ended up facing Falcons, they lost on Dust 2 and Ancient, and I don't know. I rate Falcons a little bit higher than them now. I have to, and I think that really for me, FaZe is going to be in the B tier also with Astralis. And that, again, I'm just managing expectations. I'm not getting too excited about them. I want to get excited. I want them to make me believe. I want to put them in the A tier based off of the personnel. I have so much faith in Elige, so much faith in Frozen. No, I know Brokey's ceiling, and I know that Kerrigan can tie it all together. Rain, on the other hand, maybe underperforming. He tends to fall into little slumps here and there, especially in the middle of seasons or when things are kind of going bad with the team. But I'll put FaZe just actually one tick above them because I kind of know what Astralis is at this point. And if I'm ordering this tier list as well as putting them into the tiers, then yeah, I have a little bit higher expectation for FaZe than Astralis. Okay, I think that this is enough time where they should be ironing out the kinks in the roster. Now, Mao's grand finalists of consecutive tournaments, winners of Cluj. Felt like we were going to usher in the Brolin era. That's a joke. That is a joke after all. And then they lose in the grand finals and they just get bodied by Vitality. I will say this. Vitality looks untouchable. And they were able to beat Spirit. And I can't believe I'm saying it, but I'm going to put them in the A+ tier. I didn't think that Brolin was going to make this team as good as they did, or Spinks really for that matter, and then Brolin switching the role. But I can't deny the results, okay? So my expectations are very high for this team. I would say that anything other than a top 4 finish is going to show that they've already hit their ceiling, and the teams just didn't know what they were playing against. So now that's why the expectation's high. You know what? And in fact, I'll exercise my own judgment. Because I think teams are going to start game planning for Mouz a little bit more and understanding how they play, I'll put them in the A tier above Na'Vi, okay? We're going to separate these tiers just a little bit more. Okay, one team that I feel like is falling off every single tournament that I watch them is Eternal Fire. They've made every playoffs of every tournament at this year so far, but they're not doing anything once they reach these playoffs, okay? They're losing in the first round every single time. In Cluj, they lost in the first round. Was it to Mouz or... Let me see really quickly. They lost in the first round to Falcons. Oh, yeah, that's right. They lost to Falcons in the first round off of the back of a really, really bad nuke performance from Xantares in map 3 and a really good Nico one. And then at ESL Pro League, they also made it to the playoffs, but they lost to Spirit. And they had an incredibly close map 1. They could have taken that map. They could have taken that series 2-0, actually, if we're being honest. So I still have expectations for this team. I'm actually going to still rate them higher than Na'Vi because I just feel like they're still running on the fumes of kind of like the high of having Jota. The high of having Jota is something I made a good point on Snake and Banter recently. I think this is just such a pure upgrade. It's such a pure upgrade for Eternal Fire. Even with Romps and Spinks, and even though things are going so well for Vitality, I still sometimes see how Romps plays in certain positions on T side, and think Spinks might have done a little bit more there. Jota, every single situation, I think he's doing better than Calyx. So that's why I consider it the most strict upgrade of any team. Now, the Mongols, they were able to make it over Na'Vi, and so in some way, I'm gonna put them in the A+ tier. I'm gonna put them in the A+ tier. I have so much certainty that this team is going to make it to the top 4. Whereas Mouz, for some reason, I just feel like all of these 3 teams will beat them. I know that seems a little bit counterintuitive because Mouz just beat Spirit, but just, again, like it's going back to the fact that I think the rematch factor, and on a given day, things can just go a little bit better for Spirit. And I think that they can tap into that. I think that Spirit have a better... They're more top-heavy, but if Shiro and Donk are able to perform... And I think that one thing that's going for Mouz also, though, is I rate their coach very highly. Okay, so Cyclone, I've always rated him pretty highly, even if I haven't been completely public about that. The results have been in front of me the entire time. From Mouz NXT to the main Mouz roster to now what he's finding with Brolin as in-game leader, I do have to rate him quite highly. And so I just feel like teams... It's kind of the honeymoon of the team that makes me think, okay, I think they're going to come back down to earth just a little bit here. G2... I'm going to put them in the B tier. Top of the B tier, though. Actually, I'm going to put... My expectations for them are right next to FaZe. If I could make them on their own B+ tier, I probably would. But we're leaving the tier list as it is right now. Personnel-wise, they're better than FaZe. I would take Monacy over Brokey in a heartbeat. I would take Mobs for Elige. As of last year, actually, it was pretty close. But they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I'd say Elige is more decisive, but it can be a little... He can overstep. Mobs might be actually a little bit more tentative, but they both have incredible skill. But IGL for IGL, I think Snacks is actually... He's not horrendous. He would be in my D tier or C tier of IGLs on this kind of list. But he is so bad as an individual. Like, he is horrendous. He had the worst full gun round stats of any player by far. He had something like a 0.36 KPR on full gun rounds, as discovered by B-Trams, who posted that in my Twitter community. Shouts out to B-Trams, smart backwards. And I just can't unsee that. Heavy God is actually better than Rain per position. And then, who's the last guy on the team? Let's see. Is that it? I think I got everybody. No, Hunter. So Hunter would be the equivalent for, Kerrigan for Snacks, Elige for Mobs. I guess Frozen for Hunter. Yeah, Frozen does beat him there. Okay, so yeah, all in all, I think that FaZe are more synergistic. I think they have lightly better strategy, and they should be like coming up right now, whereas G2 I just feel like is getting worse. G2 is floundering. The spotlight's getting a little too bright for them. Now Falcons, this might be interesting to a lot of people. I'm going to put them in the A tier. Yeah, I actually rate Falcons pretty highly still, even though Pro League wasn't as kind to them. I think Nico, if you put any of the riflers in the A tier against each other, Nico's the best. They only lost... The teams they lost to at ESO Pro League were Mouz, who I have in the A tier. They lost to Eternal Fire, also a team I have in the A tier, and 3D Max 3-2. 2-1, I mean. No, sorry. 1-2. 1-2. It's not a BO5. So they lost 1-2 to them. They beat Liquid, and they actually were able to beat Furia. So teams that I have lower than them. Yeah, all in all, I guess I haven't put Liquid, but yeah, that's a spoiler. Falcons, Nico's so good. Dexter makes odd positional choices at times, but still I would say I would rate him better than Brokey right now. I wouldn't rate him better than Device. I'd rate him better than Icy, and I'd rate him better than anybody on the D or F tier teams. So yeah, I think Kixan actually has shown that he's incredibly capable of calling good mid rounds. So IGL test wise, very strong. I would say that he's pretty safely in the top 8 IGLs in the world right now. Other players, Tess is very streaky, very concerning. Magisk also hasn't really proven himself at all on this roster. So, weak links, weaknesses. Tessus, though, is kind of the X factor for me. I think if Tessus can actually play to like a 1.09 rating for a tournament, this team immediately becomes a contender for top 4. Because everybody else, I kind of feel like I know I'm getting more out of now. Like, Nico's going to be great. Dexter... streaky, a little streaky, but we put him in if he finds himself in a winning position, he can hit like 3 shots in a row and just change the face of a game or a round. Now, Liquid, I would say that Liquid is probably the team where I rate the pure calling, some of the lowest of this entire tournament. Actually, I think I would probably put them in the D tier of calling alone. The only reason I wouldn't put them in the F tier with the Huns is because I think the Huns are a little bit more one-dimensional. At least Liquid can kind of play off of their stars a little bit more, and sometimes Liquid or Twiz lets them. But I would put them in the B tier right here. My expectations of Liquid are that they won't reach top 8 at this event, and I would rate all of the teams above them. Yeah, this is almost kind of like a power ranking along with a tier list too. So NAF and JKS are both concerning. I know people are like, which one would you replace? I mean, if that's the question, then obviously JKS, so you can retain the America slot. But when it comes to current form, I would say that JKS might arguably be better than NAF, but NAF when he has his slumps, they're usually very short-lived, so I expect him to play himself out of that one. Imperial, on the other hand, kind of an arduous road to get here. A team that hasn't really been able to receive too many invites, but they beat Fluxo, Pain, and MIBR to make it through here. If I want to take that at face value, I would have to rate MIBR actually at the top of C tier. I'm actually going to put them right there. I think that they show more promise. I think they're hungrier than Furia. I don't know if I truly believe they're going to do better than VP. Actually, I'll put them beneath them there. But they're going to be kind of like neck and neck with Furia for the better Brazilian performing team. I would say that off the rip, Imperial have a better opper. I think Try is definitely better. I'd say that Vinny might arguably be as good of a caller as Fallen nowadays. For Noe and Decenti, I don't know. I guess versus like K Serato and Yuri, they're a little bit weaker, but it's not by a significant margin. I'd say K Serato's better, but I'm not sure if I really... K Serato's better, but I'm not sure if one of the other guys, Decenti or No Way, could be taking Yuri's spot. Something for me to dive into a little bit more, and I think that's going to be it, guys. Yeah, I mean, I got a few more teams down here, but they're not actually participating in Lisbon, or they are just redundant because I decided to add their images twice. So, yes, S tier, Sole Occupant is Vitality. A+ tier, Spirit, the Mongols. A tier, Mouz, Eternal Fire, Na'Vi, the Falcons. And just so you guys know, the way that this tournament runs is it's a 6-team playoff. Let me make sure I'm correct about that one. I'm pretty sure this is a 6-team playoff where this is like 2 group stage. It's kind of like the IEM model, like the Katowice model, where you play through the group stage of the team that wins all their games 1, 2, 3. If they win 3 BO3s, they immediately get a semifinals berth. And if you lose in that game versus them after winning 2 games, then you would get a quarterfinal berth, and then there is a lower bracket for both of the group stages A and B, where I imagine that, I mean, some team's going to have to fight all their way through, potentially having to win 3 BO3s, so pretty difficult for these teams, pretty stacked. If I wanted to be a bit more discerning with who I actually think is going to make it, because I'm looking at these brackets right now, I think that the teams that'll make it from Group A will be Vitality, Spirit, and I think I have to go with Mouz. So that's kind of like the A+ and A tier teams. And then from the Group B, I would be taking here... Yeah, I'd be taking the Mongols. I would be taking... Oh, it's tough because they're on the same side of the bracket. But I'd take Mongols. I don't know if I really can take Na'Vi in good faith right now because I think they're gonna hit the lower bracket off of Mongols. So one team has to come out from the other side. I'll still say, okay, you know what? I'll still take Na'Vi to make it through the entire lower bracket because I just don't see a team that's better than them. But from the other side, it's going to be either G2, Imperial, Liquid, or Eternal Fire. Something about Eternal Fire feels pretty flimsy to me lately. I'm a little concerned about them. Like the coin flip matchup between them and Liquid to kick things off is tough. Whereas G2, I already know is probably going to win against Imperial. And then the G2 just need one good game to make it. So, man, I hate to do this because I rate the team lower, but I just say by chance, I would say that the 6 teams that make it to the playoffs are Vitality, Spirit, Mouz from Group A, and Group B, I'm going to take Mongols, Na'Vi, and G2. Yeah, that's how I see it breaking down. So even some of the teams in my A tier and B tier are going to get undone by G2 kind of because they have good seeding. Yeah, so all in all, that's going to be it, guys. Thank you, SkinClub, for supporting me as I make these kinds of videos. Check out the rest of their website, see if anything interests you. Check out the other content from some of the other people. I'm going to be doing an article for them later this month, so hopefully you guys were able to enjoy, and hopefully this bracket actually works out in the way that I expect, and this tier list, even though it won't really match the tournament bracket as perfectly as I possibly can make it, maybe we're going to see some of the teams that should perform well do, such as Eternal Fire. Like, the tier list says they should do well, but I just think it's like, if I was betting on it, I can't really bet on them in good faith to beat Liquid, and I think G2 just only has to beat one good opponent to make it, as opposed to Eternal Fire and Liquid, who are going to have to beat one of each other, and then G2 is going to have to beat just one of them. And I think that I would just give G2 a better chance then, at that point. I'd like to see Eternal Fire make it. I'll be honest. I do. I think the narratives work out a lot easier. And I think that it's cool for Xantares to have this run of form with his team after toiling away for such a long time. As always, guys, being toxic is a choice.